You know, air conditioning is an absolute blessing. When it's hot, when it's humid, oh, walking through those doors, life is good. But I don't know about you, once I get in there, I get kind of cold sometimes. Nothing like sitting through a restaurant meal and freezing. So I needed something light, something to take the chill off of the air. So the easy, elegant Serger shawl is the answer, I think. It doesn't take too much fabric. It's seriously so easy. I'm working on the Baby Lock Triumph because it's the ideal serger for doing the edge and the cover stitch gathering. Join me. I'm Cathy. This is Sewing Tech Talk. You won't believe how easy and elegant this project is. This is seriously an easy project. Now, what you're going to need is, of course, you're going to need some fabric. And I know there's not a lot of choices out there for garment fabric sewing, because this is generally not made with quilting cotton. So I looked online and I found quite a few sources. What we really want is a super lightweight, drapable fabric. This is a chiffon. And if you look for some keywords like internet fabric shopping, you can find a chiffon. It's surprisingly affordable. I found a printed chiffon for right around a little bit more than $3 a yard. This is 54-inch wide fabric. The fabric width goes up and around the shawl and it ends like right here. So 54 inches, great. If you're, height enhanced, you might need something a little bit wider, maybe a 60-inch, or if it ends right here, it's still okay. This is a very, very forgiving project and a very, very forgiving shawl. Now the length of it is going to be gathered up. So this was the selvage edge, which is the two outside edges of the fabric. And we're going to gather it right along down the middle. Now my gathers are about 3 inches apart. But what we're going to do, I found the easiest, is I only marked the fabric about a little bit over 6, a little bit less than 7 inches apart. And then I stitch those with the marks, and then I stitch down the middle. The Triumph is an ideal serger for this process because we have the width of the harp of the machine right here, just like on a sewing machine. If you have a width about this wide to the right of your needle on a serger, this is going to be a little bit more of a challenging project because you have to get this through that. So like I said, I used a removable marker. In this case, I used a chalk marker. Where's my chalk marker? I used a chalk marker and I marked the width of the fabric going down, and I have it right here. Now after marking, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the outside edge, all 4 edges, and I'm going to encase them with a serger stitch and overlock stitch. Now the Baby Lock Triumph does both cover stitch, which is what we're going to gather the shawl up with, and an overlock stitch. Then overlock stitch goes over the edge. The cover stitch, well, if you look at the bottom of any of your t-shirts or something like that, that's that hem, that 2 parallel lines of stitching, and on the back it has interlooped threads on the back, and it covers the back of that hem. So the Baby Lock Triumph will do both stitches. It can do them at the same time, but it will do them both separately, and we're doing them separately today. So first I need to finish off the outside edge. Now that selvage edge running on both sides of the fabric, a lot of times that has holes in it, sometimes it's kind of nasty, sometimes it doesn't even have printing. So you're going to use the serger to trim that off. And if it trims off a little bit of the width, it's okay. It's a very forgiving shawl. Like I said, choose your fabrics for drapeability and softness. This is a chiffon. You also have other options. Look at this elegant option. Isn't that pretty? Now I spent a little bit more for this fabric. This is silk burnout velvet. Whoa, sounds expensive, right? Well, it was actually only about a little bit less than $15 a yard. Yeah, that sounds like a lot, right? but you really only need a yard and a half, and I say this is quite elegant. So this might even work for the holidays as well. So now, let's finish off this edge with that overlock stitch. And any type of fabric you pick, you're going to pick the right stitch for that outside edge. The Triumph has lots of options for that overlock edge. You can do a wide one, you can do a narrow one, even a tiny little rolled hem. But the Triumph has another option that I really like. It's called a wave. I'm pretty sure it's the only serger with a decorative stitch. What the wave does is it comes in and out and gives you that really neat effect with the thread. But you can also do a reversed wave. So let's get out our chart. It's here somewhere. This chart gives you kind of an easy menu for some of the 86 different stitch combinations that this machine does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the 3-thread reversed wave, and that looks just like this. See how it has the wave, but it waves it on both sides. Now since this shawl, yeah, it's kind of a little bit reversible, I think that's going to be ideal. So now, how is that stitch set up? Well, you can follow the guide, but it's pretty easy. When I'm setting up for the wave, you can see how the machine has kind of clues to help you. For a wave, I need to be on stitch selector B or C. I need to have this lever up into the wave position, and this is the fun trick. For the wave, normally you're coming down here and you're coming down here. For the reversed wave, it's as simple as this. You cross the threads. I bet whoever found that out, the sewing engineer, was pretty clever. Maybe they even misthread it and thought, ooh, this is a neat, fun stitch. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stitch along that outside edge. Let's get some of this out of the way. Oh, and before I forget, this is a lightweight fabric too, lots of fabric here, but this is an organza. And organza is a super lightweight fabric, but it's meant to be stiff. Think of those 50s dresses, right, that stick out. And so organza would work, but remember, it's kind of puffy. So if you are ordering something like this online, you might want to request a sample and see if the fabric is stiff or soft and drapery, because we want soft and drapery. And here's a lovely another little, this is a knit, right? A polyester knit. Look how drapey it is. It's a little bit heavier. Maybe that's for that winter super elegant shawl. But enough talking, let's get stitching. So I have this all set up for that reversed wave. I've put the Ultra T foot on it because I'm just going to be sewing along the edge. I find that the Ultra T foot works great because it's a non-friction foot, and I'm going to be sewing on like super slick, slinky fabrics, and for some reason that anti-friction really helps. But let's get this stitching and I'll show you what that wave, that reversed wave looks like. Here's my sample. That turns out pretty good. You can see how the wave is reversing from one side to the other. Pretty neat. All right, now let's do the actual fabric. We'll get all this other fabric out of the way. While I'm here, this is a sample, the leftover I had. That's that selvage, and if I would be stitching on this, I wouldn't use these colors, obviously, but I'd come right along here and just trim that selvage automatically off. Now, let's find my edge. Oops, that's not the one. There it is. Okay, here we are. Now, I've already done my wave, and I'm going to come on in, lift the foot, and get that pretty much in. Now, on this fabric, I did trim a sample when I cut it to size, and I kind of determined that I needed this kind of a stitch length. Get it right up in there. There we go. You might want to give it a little tiny bit when it's going over that other seam, just a little bit of a help from the back, and get it started. Now I'm going to have a little tail here, and I'm going to have tails when I do my cover stitch gathering as well. You can leave the tail, obviously. Take the tail, take a large blunt-eyed needle and pull this tail through the inner loop threads. Or I thought that on this shawl, what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to put a little bead right in here, and it would kind of help weigh down those corners. Okay, I've gone around my entire shawl. Now once you go around it, it's pretty hard to kind of figure out what that selvage is, you know, the length of the fabric. So what I did is, before I did the four corners, see, it's hard to find the edge, I put a little note to remind me this is the way we're going to go. And like I said, I marked it with chalk. Now chalk I thought is a great solution for this because it comes off very easy. And even if it does come off easy, well, I almost called this not the easy elegant shawl. I almost called it the it's okay shawl. Because why? Because it's really hard to make a mistake with this. You can kind of go a little bit off and everything's going to be fine. Now we've finished the overlock around the edge. We've marked our fabric. Now what we need to do is switch the machine over for a cover stitch. That involves moving the needles over from overlock to cover stitch. And we're going to engage our differential feed and put our flat overlock table on as well. So let me get those accessories. I need to get another needle, and I'll be right back and we'll switch this over to cover stitch. So let's finish switching on over to cover stitch. I went and found my needles. So the Baby Lock Triumph uses the needle EL705CF, and it says that right here on the base of the machine. And I'm using a decorative thread, so I'm using a size 90 needle. Now I'm going to take off the Ultra T foot. However, I could still do this with this foot. I do have the ruffling foot. What it does is when the feed dogs move, this presses down the fabric just a little bit extra and gives you a little bit more of a ruffle. So we're going to use that for at least our initial pass with the machine. Now I've moved the needles over from here in the overlock position to the cover stitch, and I'm doing a wide cover stitch. The blade, I don't need it, so I'm going to turn the dial on the side down into the lock position, and that lowers that blade. This is the upper looper. I don't need that either, so let's put that down in the down position and take off our overlock table. We're going to put on our cover stitch table. And, before I do that, right down here, I'm going to go into the longest stitch length. The large lower knob does the stitch length. Now here's my chalk line. It's not very easy to see. It's good enough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this under that gathering foot right there, and I'm going to start the cover stitch right on the top of the fabric. And I'm going to need to close the door and take the differential feed all the way up to the maximum gather. See why I said how it's really nice to have this big open area? Because I have all this fabric and I'm going to have more and more as I go across the shawl. So now let's do a gather. See how that gathering foot really presses it down, and I get a really nice gathering stitch. Get these threads out of the way and follow the line. Now when I come to the end, I'm just going to serge off the edge. Remember how I said on the corners you're going to take that serger tail and bury it? Well, in this case, what you're going to do is you're going to take the needle threads and that serger, that looper thread, and bury it. But there's one thing about a cover or a chain stitch, and that's what we're doing. It's kind of like the stitch on the top of a bag of dog food. You know how you pull those threads and everything comes out? So I'm really going to stitch off the end, and I'm really going to stitch it so that there's a pretty significant tail. I'm going to trim it down later, but I don't want that to come out and take out all my gathers. So let's stitch off with that big long tail. Then what I'm going to do is move on over and stitch that other marked line. Remember, they're about six and a little bit less than 7 inches apart. Now while you're sewing, if you get a little bit off the line, remember, it's also called the It's Okay shawl. If you're a little bit off, it's really not going to show in the very end product. Now what I would do is I should go across the whole shawl and stitch on my marked lines, because that chalk's going to come off pretty easy. But let me just show you the finishing. After that, what you're going to do is then you're going to stitch in between the marks, in between your gathering, and that means you don't have to mark every 3 or 4 inches like this is. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch between the two. Now because it's gathered, what's going to happen is you're going to have all these kind of gathers coming across your stitching area, and you'll just stitch over the top of them. I can leave that gathering foot on, or I could put that ultra T foot back on, and everything's going to be just fine. I'm going to leave the gathering foot on, but I could just as easily switch over to that other foot. So now let's stitch in between our gathered sections. See how having that really big throat helps me really get between these two 6-inch sections? If this was up like this, I'd have a lot harder time. And that's it. All I really have to do is stitch on all my mark lines and then stitch in between them. You can make this, in the time it takes to make dinner reservations, practically. And then that's all that's left to do. After you have your elegant serger shawl, well, now it's time to go out on the town and enjoy that air conditioning without shivering. I'm Cathy, and this is Sewing Tech Talk. George is going to tell you a little bit more about the Triumph. It's an amazing serger, and it does a lot more than you think a serger can do. And super quick, elegant projects, well, makes this an awesome serger. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Cathy. That was an amazing presentation. The most advanced feature on this is Revolutionaire. Now, Baby Lock invented the air threading serger, but Revolutionaire is different. It has two separate motors that thread both the loopers with a burst of air, as well as all the needles with air. And so it's so easy. No longer do you have to struggle with that serger that is so difficult to use. Now, this serger is actually up to 8 threads. You can use it in 8 thread combinations, and that gives you 87 different stitch combinations. Now, why would I need to use that? Well, first of all, this serger is a 4-thread overlock, and the overlock on this here, you can sew on all different fabrics because of a patented auto thread delivery. Auto thread delivery, they call it ATD. It actually has a device in the machine that forms the stitch with the perfect amount of thread. Now, what that means is that there is no tension adjustments whatsoever. Now, there are brands out there that have so-called computerized automatic tensions. Well, there are too many combinations to give you every single setting. So, for example, with this machine, all I do is select A, B, C, or D based on the type of sewing. So A would be my 4-thread overlock, like on this knit, which is just so easy and it has such good fabric control. But it also could be a wide stitch, like, let's say I wanted to do a 2-thread with this thick thread. There's no difference whether you have a thick thread or thin thread or different weights of fabric. I can change it to B, and that is for my 3-thread. And the 3-thread on all fabrics, from cottons to stretchy fabrics to metallics. Speaking of metallics, I can work with metallic threads so easily. And so I don't even have to worry about it tangling because the machine brings it through perfectly. And as you see here on this metallic stretchy fabric, it's beautiful. In fact, it has such good fabric control that it actually can do serger crochet, as you see here with this metallic braid. No problems. Now, let's say I want to do a rolled edge. This is what's so cool. I can actually just turn a lever to rolled edge, and it forms the stitch perfectly. And regardless of the fabric or the thread, it gives me that beautiful rolled edge. All I have to do is select letter D, and everything is perfect for me. Because it doesn't work with tension whatsoever, I can actually select the wave and get this beautiful wave stitch. That is so amazing that I can use for decorations. Now, so far, I've just described a 4-thread serger. But this is not only a 4-thread serger, but it's also a 4-thread cover hem machine. And so what is a cover hem machine? Now, first of all, this serger has a very large opening and beautiful, beautiful lighting. I can easily convert it to a cover hem and put this table on, and now a cover hem is that commercial grade of stitch that both hems and finishes all at the same time. I can do a triple cover hem, which is really good on very, very stretchy fabric. But then just by simply removing the needle, I can do a narrow cover hem, which is better on some of your real slinky fabrics like this metallic. I can also use it for woven fabrics. Now with woven fabric, I want to use the wider stitch. So that is the cover hem. Now what's really exciting about this serger is that I can actually merge all this together. It has everything. So it has up to 8 threads. And what other sergers don't have is your 6, 7, and 8 thread combination. So for example, let's say I want to sew very, very heavy fabric, okay? Well, first of all, the cutter on this is a locking cutter, okay? That means it has no flexibility on it. And what that means is that on this very, very thick fabric, it can cut it very thick. But I want to use all 8 threads. That is the widest 4 thread and the widest triple cover hem all together. And that's going to give me amazing strength. I also can use the 8 thread with the cover hem for working with ruffling. Now this has a single unit differential feed. And what that means is that it moves in a much more consistent, longer path, stroke. And so gathering, okay, this is what's crazy. This serger can gather like you would not believe. The differential feed, I can adjust it to the maximum on this, and I can actually take, and this is where I would use I love the knee lip. The knee lip gives me hands-free capability. And so I can actually put my ruffler foot on here, and I can lift up my foot without having any need to hold onto the fabric. And then I can put my fabric on the bottom that I want to gather, and then put a piece into the slot that I don't want to gather. And in one pass, I get this beautiful ruffle that can be used for a dust ruffle or pillow. It is truly, truly amazing. Now, I mentioned that this serger can work with decorative threads. Now, there's a lot of different weights of threads. It even has a special bypass where I can put a thread up to a 4-weight thread in it. That no other serger has this capability, and this almost looks like a yarn. It is so amazing. That is why this serger is the most advanced and the easiest to use. So throw away that old closet serger. Get the new Baby Lock Triumph. This will completely expand your creativity and cut your sewing time by half, making it much more efficient. For more information on this incredible product, click on the link to see our current special offer. You can email us at customerservice@moores-sew.com or call us at 1-800-865-9664.